What if I told you that in the coming years, many of the very things Americans take for granted, like our access to easy energy, cheap food and water, even the money in our pockets, could be gambled away due to history's biggest pyramid scheme? And what if I told you that the world as we know it may soon become rife with conflict and unrecognizable from the one we grew up in? All frightening concepts. But what if they're true? And what if the only ones who will escape the pyramid scheme unscathed before it collapses are those who take the proper steps now? Today, I'd like for you to join me as we investigate your future, the ultimate pyramid scheme. Hello, I'm John Daly, and I want to thank you for participating in this critical event today. For the longest time, Americans were led to believe that we lived in an age of perpetual prosperity. By now, we all know that was one all-encompassing illusion. We saw the new reality firsthand as the recession shook the very foundation of our economy. Even today, we are still struggling to rebuild our great nation. However, many voices we've come to look upon as authorities want you to believe that the worst is behind us. Are they right? Most Americans feel we are simply experiencing the calm before the storm. A recent survey found that 61% of Americans believe a historic catastrophe is looming just over the horizon. It may be an economic collapse, a terrorist attack, or a natural disaster. But only 15% feel prepared for such a deeply troubling event. In 2012, the state of Wyoming debated legislation known as the Doomsday Bill in case of events like these unfolding. And in recent years, 6 other states contemplated similar measures. The USA Today recently wrote that some experts believe that Americans should brace themselves for an economic 9/11. And the Federal Reserve has prepared a study that assesses the possibilities of a future scenario where we see a 13% jobless rate, 50% Wall Street plunge, and a further 21% decline in housing prices. People are scared, and they're concerned the days ahead will be darker and more uncertain than anything they've experienced before. Now, what if I told you that they are right to worry, that a catastrophe is not only coming, but it is a mathematical certainty? On this groundbreaking broadcast, we are going to discuss the harsh realities regarding our future with a diverse team of scientists, economists, and energy analysts. They've researched the likelihood and consequences of peak energy, American food and water shortages, resource wars, plus a coming global financial catastrophe, the likes of which the world has never seen before. And their analysis has led them to believe that our future has become one dangerous pyramid scheme that's on the verge of collapsing. And when it does, it will put your investments, your wealth, and your way of life at risk. In fact, their findings show that not only are the warning signs out there, you can easily see them by just observing an undeniable mathematical pattern, one that keeps appearing in many things critical to how our society functions. Members of this acclaimed team of experts you are going to meet today have already presented their research to governments around the world and the United Nations. And now they're going to walk you through an eye-opening and at times frightening investigation, so you can decide for yourself. And just as importantly, they're going to show you how to prepare for the future in your day-to-day life, your finances, and your investments. So before we begin, let's meet the team that will be conducting this investigation. Dr. Kent Moores is one of the world's leading energy analysts. He has advised 16 world governments on energy matters and currently serves on 2 State Department task forces, one that provides oil and energy policy to developing nations and another focused on global shale gas development. Dr. Moores also has an extensive background in counterintelligence, which has led him to be called upon regularly by the National Security Council, Department of Energy, and numerous government agencies. And until recent revisions in U.S. policy, Dr. Moores was slated to be the Deputy Director of the Iraq Reconstruction Management Office in Baghdad. Keith Fitzgerald is the chairman of the Fitzgerald Group, as well as the chief investment strategist for Money Map Press, where his daily analysis reaches 500,000 readers in 35 countries. Keith has worked with think tanks around the world using his expertise in the science of complexity and in nonlinear trends in the financial markets to help policymakers predict future events and prepare for them. Keith's investigations have resulted in him predicting the 2008 oil shock, the credit default swap crisis that helped bring about the recession, and also the Greek and European fiscal catastrophe that is still wreaking havoc to this day. His research into the coming resource wars has also made him a leading authority on determining where the next global conflicts will arise and what their trigger points will be. Chris Martenson is a highly acclaimed author and scientist with a PhD in pathology from Duke University. He is the former VP of a Fortune 300 company and has become an internationally recognized expert on the dangers of exponential growth in our energy, environment, and economy. He has presented his powerful findings at the United Nations, the UK Parliament, state legislatures across the country, and to major corporations. Now, I want to warn you in advance that some of what you are about to hear may come as a shock to the system regarding your current beliefs. But let me assure you that there is hope. Now, while the evidence is overwhelming, the next chapter of the story you are about to hear has yet to be written. So let's get started by catching up with Chris, Keith, and Kent as they lay out their plans for this investigation.
In 2002, I started taking a keen interest in exactly how the economy functions. As a pathologist, I wanted to look at it through a scientist's eyes. When I did, it wasn't long before I got this sense that a potential catastrophe was beginning to take shape. One that threatened the prosperity and well-being of all Americans and most of the world.
Your research has definitely created a bit of a controversy, and that's why we've all agreed to work together to investigate this pyramid scheme theory.
It's only controversial because some folks in Washington and other world governments refuse to accept reality. The proof, it's right in front of us. You can see a pyramid scheme loud and clear on a simple chart. I can just draw it on this napkin. Hey, can I borrow your pen? Sure. Our job is to show people that this pattern could rob countless innocent folks of their wealth, freedoms, and, frankly, their futures. We have to open people's eyes and give them a way out.
What Chris drew on that napkin represents a dangerous pattern that our society has been built upon, an exponential growth curve. Looks harmless on that napkin, but it's very troubling when applied to the real world. With a traditional pyramid scheme, you usually have some sort of crooked operation that survives off of a constant influx of new people investing their money so that the people on the top of the pyramid get paid. You need exponential growth in the amount of investors, or else the pyramid scheme collapses when more and more people want their money back. But our pyramid scheme theory suggests something entirely different. That our way of life has been built upon unstable exponential growth needs.
Now, to maintain our current way of life, the so-called American dream, we have to rely on the false belief that we can preserve exponential growth forever in three systems: energy, the environment, and the economy. I call them the three E's. The economy on the top, with energy and the environment forming the foundation, an interconnected pyramid. Looking at that top E, the economy, our GDP is a near-perfect exponential growth curve, doubling and doubling repeatedly over the last 80 years. But something that was experiencing even more dangerous exponential growth is our total credit market debt, doubling around every 6 or 7 years since the mid-1970s.
You know, if our economy would just continue to grow infinitely, we could actually keep this going for a little while longer. But we'd also need to continue a pattern of exponential growth in our ability to find and harness more energy, grow more food from dwindling amounts of farmland, find new water sources from deeper beneath the ground, discover and mine a whole array of crucial minerals. What we're finding out more and more with each day that passes is that all these things are finite in nature. The trick is they are absolutely necessary for maintaining our current living standards in a modernizing world with 7 billion people.
To really drive this pyramid scheme theory home, we just need to have people begin asking themselves some very important questions. What is the real fallout if the world is caught in the midst of an energy crisis? Not just oil, energy across the board. What if there's an international run on minerals, water, and food? What if we can't continue to grow these areas exponentially for a global economy that's built on infinite expansion? And what happens to America and the entire world if one piece of this puzzle falls behind, or even worse yet, all of them? We have some very real issues to address that for the first time in history may find their way to American shores. And I think that's the story people need to hear.
Chris, Keith, and Kent have begun to outline their pyramid scheme theory. But will this hold up to scientific scrutiny? We aim to get to the bottom of that question today by exploring dangerous exponential growth patterns in our energy, environment, and economic systems. The 3 E's. Then the team is going to connect them together to form the big picture, the pyramid, and what this means for our futures. They'll also give you their analysis on how to protect your wealth and way of life when this catastrophe truly erupts. Now, in our first segment, you will discover why militaries from around the world believe we are running straight into a full-blown energy crisis. We'll share some government reports that were never meant to be seen by the public, which may reveal that our days of easy oil are behind us. The team will assess all energy sources for their viability in helping us lessen the blow in the days after our petroleum-based economy comes to a close. But you'll see how these solutions won't be enough to stop the pyramid scheme from crashing down. And remember, Chris, Kent, and Keith are leading international experts on energy. In fact, Kent currently spends most of his time consulting with world leaders on this pressing issue. Now, for most of his career, he was on a 72-hour standby with our government for major energy issues, meaning at any time he could be taken for 3 days with no warning whatsoever to address major events in oil anywhere on the planet. So his viewpoint is not one to be taken lightly. You are about to get the real story and real solutions for this historic crisis.
To keep this pyramid scheme from crashing down, you need exponential growth to be maintained forever in those bottom 2 E's, energy and the environment. They're the enablers of this whole setup. With that first E, energy, we can see a clear-cut case for exponential growth by simply analyzing the amount of energy we've consumed on this planet over the past 200 years or so. It looks a lot like that image I drew on the napkin. You see a long, flat period followed by a quick rise. And that pattern raises a big question. What happens to our society, our economy, and just about everything else if we can't maintain this exponential growth pattern? I think we're about to find out the answer. But you won't hear the politicians in any party or the mainstream media bring this issue up because the big energy companies pad the donation books of everyone in D.C. And big energy pays for a lot of advertising during those supposedly unbiased news programs. Money shapes the story of any issue in this country. And the story the big energy money is selling us is, we've got nothing to worry about. But they're wrong. And I believe there is no quick fix for this energy predicament.
It's amazing that in the time since we kicked off the Industrial Revolution, we have basically extracted all of the easy energy there is to be had using our past, current, and near future technologies. And we're now so far behind the curve towards mass integration of any viable alternatives like the natural gas that's here at Cove Point that our society is on the cusp of an energy shock like we've never experienced. There is no getting around this. Look at oil. New oil doesn't appear magically overnight. And neither do new oil refining processes. The amount of oil on this planet is finite. How finite is a big question on the minds of many scientists.
This is why I've taken such an interest in the idea of peak energy, peak oil.